Been a minute. Blue skies, blue skies. Yeah. Bybit. That's like the obvious thing to talk about. That happened over the weekend. I sat the whole thing out. I had some family over, so I was enjoying that time. Just didn't bother even looking at what the price was doing. Looked yesterday night and wow. big dump. But it's made its way actually back up, surprisingly. Another black swan event, I suppose, but it is what it is. See, all hands on deck now. Unlike, if it was just your tokens or my tokens, then, nobody would care. It'd disappear. First of all, it's not as much. It'd be a couple of thousands at most. Maybe some of you guys, a couple of million. We're talking about over 1 billion. So just the magnitude of that alone warrants all hands on deck, right? Because it's not just Bybit that has to deal with this stuff. It's all the exchanges. So I can imagine all the exchanges are down to collaborate to try and, track these guys down. It reminds me of an old African story. This story originates somewhere in modern day Niger Republic, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, that kind of area. I think it's in Hausa or a Hausa tale. The Hausa people are a West African ethnic group that have some very, very interesting story, including their ancient Hausa kingdom. Anyway, so there was a big Hausa king. So this king, right, he had a town crier, or as is tradition with many of these ethnic groups around that area, when the king arrived at a destination, prior to that arrival, there would be someone who would blow a giant trumpet or flute or some kind of wind instrument to announce the arrival of the king. Also, if the king needed to get word out, he would send this so-called town crier into the middle of the city or town, whatever, and they'd blow this big flute or wind instrument, which is called a kakaki, I think is what it's called. Anyway, they'll blow it, and this big noise that it makes grabs the attention of everybody in the area. And also it's a characteristic sound that, is unique to the king. Now, this particular instrument also is very elaborately decorated so that, you can't miss it. So whether you hear it or see it, you know exactly what it is. It's unmistakable, and it's unmistakably the king's. Now, there was this very well-renowned thief who managed to steal this instrument and then realized very quickly that he couldn't sell it, because wherever he went, people would recognize that this was the king's wind instrument, the king's kakaki, and nobody would buy it because, if you bought it from him, then he's transferred the guilt onto you, and sooner rather than later, you're going to get told on either by someone who spots it next to you or in your possession, or by emissaries of the king themselves. And subsequently, you would face a pretty serious retribution or some very swift justice. So basically, in the end, the thief had to give it back, not personally. In the middle of the night, he sort of left the wind instrument somewhere where the king and his emissaries would find it, and it was eventually returned. So subsequent to that event, the saying says, no one can steal the king's flute. Who shall steal the king's flute? Nobody. They are unable to unavail themselves of it, or something like that. It's hard to translate to English, but you get the general idea. So in this case, obviously the king is Bybit, the flute is their stolen crypto, and the thieves are the so-called North Korean team that stole it. They've been trying to sell it, they've been trying to get rid of it, monetize it somehow, but it's very, very difficult because all hands are on deck, all eyes are watching, and no matter how much they try to splice and dice and send and distribute, everybody's involved now. And we have such technology now, tracking technology, to follow them. So the saga continues. In the end, I think that they're going to either retrieve most of it back or block it or lock it or burn it somehow. I don't think that this group is going to be able to get away with it. But other people that have been looking at it have said that there's more to it than meets the eye, that it just seems a little bit too perfectly timed, because when it did happen, it was when things were about to turn around and head north, in terms of price, that is. And then all of a sudden, this event happened and boom, back down again. So a lot of people have posited that this might actually be a planned inside job. Either way, it's a kind of proof of concept in two things. First, can we steal and dispose of something of that magnitude using cryptocurrencies? The answer to that would determine how we go forward with legislation concerning exchanges, right? The second thing is, it is a demonstration of how good the tracking technology has become. So those of you who are still thinking that crypto is anonymous, then you can buy and sell anonymously without anybody knowing what you're doing, this is proof of concept. And I think that this is going to demonstrate very clearly that we now have the technology, they now have the technology to track exactly every step that you made with your crypto. So those of you that hold it for the purposes of tax avoidance, illegal avoidance, I'd be very careful. I mean, if you have, sorry, I've used the wrong word there, tax evasion. Avoidance is legal, evasion isn't, depending on where you live, okay? And shout out to, people in the United States. If the income tax, crypto tax thing gets abolished, then shout out to you, then you don't have to worry. But those of you who are being elusive, thinking you're just going to hop from one exchange to the other, one wallet to the other, all they have to do is get one of those wallets KYC'd, and then they're onto you. Personally, I'm just watching to see what happens. Like, I don't really buy that it's an insider job per se. It might be a planned job. It might be somebody else that did it than the people that they always blame. It's always convenient to blame North Korea. Again, they weren't just blamed. I think the group themselves actually claimed that they pulled this off, but they might just be claiming events, claiming things that they didn't actually do. There are some groups that do that just to get some clout, put some fear in people's minds. It might be that they didn't actually do it. So, the culprits might be anybody else. Take your pick. The IRS, Russian government, FBI, me. No, if only. Anyway, just be careful. Secure yourselves. Use your cold wallets, yeah? Not your keys, not your crypto. And, if you remember the terms and conditions on these exchanges, it does say that if they get hacked, it's not secured, it's not insured. So you will lose your crypto unless, for whatever reason, they are insured and they decide to return your money, but they're under no obligation to do that because there's nothing guaranteeing, especially these foreign exchanges that are resident in different places from where you live. Be careful with those. Learn how to use a cold wallet, store your own stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.